and welcome to another edition of CPHR Leaders Lounge. Today, it is my sincere pleasure to welcome Bridgitte Anderson, the President and CEO of the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade, Western Canada's most active and influential business association. Her expertise spans a broad spectrum of disciplines, including business, communications, government, and public policy. She is the first woman to lead the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade in its 133-year history, and came to the organization from Edelman, a global public relations firm, where she led the Vancouver office, which is the city's largest communications agency. Prior to that, Bridgitte was press secretary to former BC Premier Gordon Campbell and an award-winning journalist. Bridgitte, welcome, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. It's very nice to be here, Anthony.
Bridgitte, I would like to start by asking, with the past year and a half being so difficult for so many of your members, what qualities have you seen emerge from the community of professionals and business leaders that you work with?
Well, it's interesting. You know, I had been in the role only for 4 months when the pandemic came down upon us. And so I did have a fairly long history with the Board of Trade. I was on the board of directors. I was involved with lots of committees. So I understood the organization and knew many of the members. But still, the pandemic, 4 months into a new role at the Board of Trade, there was a lot happening and at a very challenging time, as you say, for many of our members. But what really struck me very much from the beginning is just how agile and flexible many of our members were, and how and I use that word that we've heard so much in the past year and a half, is they made a pivot. They pivoted towards a lot of digital offerings, and they really did lean in. I think the other thing that really stands out for me is the collaboration that I saw between members and businesses, business associations and trade associations. I spent hours and hours on phone calls with many other people in similar roles to myself, so we could really get an understanding of what was happening in different sectors, whether it was in tourism or construction or manufacturing. But we all shared our what we were hearing from our members, and we were all sharing the conversations we were having with different levels of government. And so that collaboration really allowed us, all of us in our own roles, and for me at the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade, to really understand deeply what was happening with our members and to be able to quickly share information and resources with them.
Okay, so I guess you touched a little bit about that, but do you find that that was unique then about the Vancouver business community's approach to these challenges that we've faced, or other elements that you would say were unique specifically to our community?
Well, the level of collaboration, I think there was lots of jurisdictions that probably around the world that probably felt that too. But I really thought there was a camaraderie that happened in the Vancouver business community. I would also say the collaboration with all three levels of government. You know, very quickly on, we became a member of the Premier's Economic Recovery Task Force. And so that kind of sharing and that two-way dialogue was really, really helpful. Lots of phone calls and discussions with whether it was the federal government or municipal governments or Metro Vancouver. And so I think there was just a willingness that we were all in this together and really trying to find ways to support businesses through a really difficult time.
Of course, of course. Now, I mean, clearly the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade was always so focused on events, and they're an incredibly important part of what you do, as they are to our association, which is CPHR. So, because they provide, of course, network opportunities, a sense of connectiveness amongst the members. But how are you approaching now the return of in-person events over the next few months? And what are you hearing from members in terms of their comfort level with events? Do they want them in future, or do they still want kind of a hybrid approach? I'm just curious about what your take is on that.
Well, you really need a crystal ball to figure that one out, don't you? And I think that all of us are sort of navigating that and trying to figure that out. For sure, one of the things that members value most is the ability to connect in person. And we want to be able to do that. And we are planning to do that, to bring people back in smaller groups over the summer, and then in a larger way in September. But there are lots of members who have really enjoyed the convenience of our virtual events. And we've had nearly 60 virtual events over the last year and a half. And so clearly we know that they are popular. And so we're probably going to offer a mix of both and see where things pan out really over, I'd say, the fall and into the winter, and find out where things settle back. It's still really unclear whether people will come back to the office 1 day a week, 4 days a week, somewhere in between. I don't think it's going to return to 5 days a week. So we want to be able to share or serve our members in the best way that we can possible. And we have to take that guidance from them. And it's a little unclear yet how they're going to be able to come back or have a remote or hybrid working environment. So we'll reflect that. But definitely, we are very eager to have people back in person and planning to do something big and something very fun come September.
Well,
If
we
the
look
Public
forward to that.
Health Authority allows that
Right.
and on all the
Yeah.
guidance is in the right way.
And it seems to be the case, given the plan and the rollout so far. We've been respecting those thresholds, so that's a good sign. But I'm curious about reach because we've seen it in our association with events that we've held, and we've held a lot more than ever before. Of course, all virtual. Did you see a further reach out? In other words, like more members coming that they wouldn't normally come because they couldn't make it physically? Have you seen that?
We have seen our event attendance rise pretty significantly in the last year and a half. And I think that is because of the convenience. People can log on quickly from their home office or their kitchen table or whatever it might be, and be able to quickly access that content without thinking about having to get downtown or having to give up a couple of hours in their day to commute downtown to an event. So I think it's been really successful, and that's why we want to be able to offer that to our members in some way, shape, or form. And so it's really wonderful because part of what we're trying to do in our new strategic plan is broaden our membership base to new communities, new sectors. And so this has been really successful in being able to do that.
Of course. Now, I also want to, because it is talking about the reopening and future events and all. And clearly, I want to commend you again for your letter that you wrote to the Prime Minister and the various premiers across Canada around reopening and specifically the border and the effect on the various boards of trades across Canada, but specifically here in BC and in Vancouver, and the fact that the border remains closed, and to, I guess, foreigners, let's just say, Canadians who are double vax can come back with a single-day quarantine, but really the vast majority of tourism is not eligible to come back to Canada for any time soon. And even in fact, I guess this past week, Prime Minister was asked the question about opening of the border and whether July 21 is a possible date. And he alluded that he's now looking at 80% of Canadians to be double vaccinated before the border opens up, where a few weeks ago it was 75. So the needle keeps moving. I'm just curious. I mean, what are you hearing from your members? There clearly must be some frustration. It's hurting businesses here in BC specifically. What further arrows do you have in your quiver? Because your message seems to be, I wouldn't say lost, but great, it's another message, but they're just not listening. What are your thoughts? What are you planning to do? Anything different? And you must be hearing more and more every day the frustration of businesses that they can't plan and for a return to normalcy.
Well, certainly as we see vaccination rates increase across Canada, there is a call for the border to reopen fully. And the expert panel laid out the conditions that needed to be met to do so safely. And we have been very vocal in amplifying what the work has been done by experts in this field. The other piece of it, beyond the recreational travel and tourism, is business travel. And I think where there is a bit of a gap of understanding is the amount of planning that needs to happen in business travel, particularly around conferences and those kinds of events that are planned months and sometimes years in advance. So if we don't start communicating what those guidelines are going to be and when they will be in place, we are losing out on some of those events that are being planned now for whether it's the fall, the winter, or into 2022 and beyond. So it's imperative that the government understands the value of business travel. And we are doing some work with our counterparts in Montreal and Toronto to really pull that data together to show the business case around how important it is. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars that go into the economy because of business travel and the spin-offs from that. And that's something that we really want the government to hear us and understand, but also to understand that we need those decisions in place now so that businesses can plan for travel for the fall and the winter. And that is over and above the recreational travel and tourism, which we know has been hurting, and they will be the last sector to recover. So It is compounded by business travel for sure.
Yeah, that's a great point, Bridgitte. You're absolutely right. And I hear it, with some of the work I'm doing at a global level, where they're asking me, is Vancouver open? Because Vancouver, or BC specifically, was a great place to have conferences here, and I can't give them an answer. Well, we don't know. We haven't decided, and people are planning a year out. Well, then maybe we'll move our conference to, of course, the U.S., which is much more liberal, much more open, and so that's a challenge for us. And it's sad that we're not able to see the impact because it could be a lasting impact. And so, I fully support what you're trying to do, and hopefully, that'll resonate in the next few weeks, I guess, or months. in terms of hoping to have some better decisions around this. But thank you for that. I'm curious, I want to pivot as well, just touch on a different subject right now, Bridgitte. And really, I noticed that the Board of Trade's Diversity and Inclusion Council has been very active during the pandemic through your advocacy work and the education efforts. What are you seeing in terms of DEI programs being a strategic business advantage for many organizations?
Well, this is something that I am incredibly passionate about. And just to give a bit of context and background is back in about 2017, if I have the date correct, I was the chair of the Women's Leadership Council. And even at that time, myself and other members of the council were talking about evolving the group to have a broader diversity and inclusion lens. And so that is something that I decided to do very early on when I joined the Board of Trade as the CEO. And so we established the Diversity and Inclusion Leadership Council in May of 2020. And so it has been through its first year already, and it has been incredibly, I'm very, very, very grateful for the work that this group has done. And they have just really charted such a successful path. A couple of really important milestones is that we have certified over 600 people with certificates in diversity and inclusion training. And this is done through a partnership with the Canadian Centre of Diversity and Inclusion. We've joined the President's group. We've also been able to create a number of resources for members around diversity and inclusion. We've joined the 50-30 challenge, and we are seeing hit those metrics when it comes to the board of directors. And so for the next year, as they begin their planning cycle, how are we going to build on that? You know, we have ensured that there is diversity throughout all of our events. We are reaching out to other members of other communities, whether it's the Black community, the Black business community, whether it's Asian business community members. We already have done work for many years around Indigenous reconciliation and events, and we're looking to expand that. So for me, it is a business imperative. There is such a strong business case to have a diverse and inclusive workplace and to have those kinds of metrics in place and to really show action. And I think all of the events over the last year and a half just prove how important it is for society. And so I'm delighted with the work that's been done and really excited to see what we're going to do in the next year and build on the success we've already seen.
I'm really pleased to hear that because, as you know, HR professionals are often at the forefront of leading DEI efforts. So it's clearly, you know, in our wheelhouse. And so I'm just curious, do you see this shifting or expanding to other facets of business as organizations increase their levels of commitment?
Well, I think we're at one of those watershed moments, and whether it was the horrific, and I won't say discovery because our Indigenous communities knew about these unmarked graves, so it is the recovery of these poor children, or whether it was George Floyd's killing and Black Lives Matter. You know, I think that we are at a watershed moment, and whether it's about business or whether it's about individuals, there is change right now, and we have an opportunity to really, I think, leverage this opportunity and really to amplify those voices. And it's a journey. I think all of us would know that diversity and inclusion, it isn't just one and done. It is something that you have to commit to and you have to show action day in and day out. And so I look to my members of the Diversity and Inclusion Leadership Council and ask them, you know, what would you like to do in this year? What it would be really most important to get done in your work plan? And then commit to that and to report back to members on it.
Yeah. You're so right, Bridgitte. Too often it was the flavor of the month, so to speak, and then they move on and something else. And we have to live it and breathe it every day. It's got to be part of our lives and mindset every single day. You're absolutely right. It can't be just, oh, let's celebrate it during this time of year and move on move on to the next thing. It can't be. So I'm glad you said that. You know, Bridgitte, I guess as an organization that looks for members and works with members and it values members, you know, one thing I guess I'd like to finish on, can you perhaps expand on how our members in HR would benefit being a member within your organization? Like, how could your organization benefit our HR professionals?
A great question, Anthony. And we have just finished our 3-year strategic plan. And at the top of that list would be enhancing member value. So I hate answering a question with a question, but I would ask your members, what would be a value of joining the Board of Trade or remaining as a member of the Board of Trade? And me and the whole team are spending so much time really thinking about that beyond events, because I think our organization was really event focused and that made a lot of sense at the time. But now we need to really evolve to more policy and advocacy around member value, around connecting members in different ways, digitally and other ways, and really leveraging the voices that we have in our own community. We've got so many experts in their own sectors. And so how do we bring that collective voice together to make this a better region to work and live? And so really looking at how we do that over the next few years, and particularly in this next year, the first year of our strategic plan. So I want your members to be part of our collective and to think about what is it that would make this region the best place to work and live, and how can we do that together? And so I put it back to your members. What would you be looking to us to do with you in partnership?
Yeah. And you know, that hits a key point for us. HR has evolved over the last 20 plus years. We see it as a profession today. It might not have been that way maybe 20 years ago. You know, there are members who are designated who, you know, really follow a very tough regiment to become certified as a professional, be it, you know, school, education, of course, a national exam, which is not easy to pass, and of course, experience. But more importantly, within our competency framework, it's more than just HR. You know, it was always about human resources, but beyond that, what we've seen and what we've been told by senior leaders who run organizations, be it CEOs, COOs, is that they want HR to be much more strategic. You know, clearly they want the I's dotted, T's crossed. That's basic, you know, I'll use the football analogy, blocking and tackling. But beyond that, they see HR as able to provide some strategy and vision when they look at M&As, and example, mergers and acquisitions, downsizing. It's more than just letting people go. It's about what's the plan then to reskill and so on and so forth. So what we've added, for example, in our competency framework is business acumen. And today, more and more HR professionals are seeking how do they improve their business acumen to be able to demonstrate that they're adding value beyond just human resources. And I think by joining the Board of Trade, by going to events, being members, I think that is where they sharpen their skills and really then, you know, have a complete, if you will, portfolio of skills that they can use when they're at the table, because they're invited more and more at the table to be there and partake in major decisions.
You know, one of the biggest issues that we're going to have in this region, we already have it, and I think it's becoming more acute, is around labor supply. So I think your organization plays a great role in that, in how we're going to attract talent and retain talent in this region when it is a global labor supply issue right now. So I think there's lots of things that we could do together as we're tackling this challenge, which is multifaceted, but it is going to be significant, and I think it's becoming more acute as we come out of the pandemic.
I concur very much so, and nonetheless, it is an area, a region that is thriving and has thrived in the past and continues to be a key market. So absolutely, I look forward to a continued partnership, Bridgitte. Well, this ends our conversation. I just want to thank you so much for taking the time, your valuable time. I know you're a very busy lady, and I just wanted to say thank you so very much for being here today and sharing some time and talking about your experiences and what you've done and what you continue to plan to do going forward. So thank you again, Bridgitte. It's really been a sincere pleasure having you on today.
Well, Anthony, thank you for the invitation. It really has been a delight to speak to you and your members, and I really look forward to seeing you and your members in person one day soon.
Same here, Bridgitte, trust me. All right, thank you again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.